recording properly. And welcome back to Carpo's channel. I have to make sure that I have this thing centered properly because it's kind of hard to get the right, to be honest. Yeah. This is my fretboard and this is my brain, and my intention here is to talk to you all about life and at the same time work on finishing this fretboard, which I started the other day. I don't expect anyone to really show up because this is a live stream that's on my guitar channel, which, let's be honest, doesn't have very many subscribers. It's not one that I really have promoted that much. It's like my main channel here, but the one that I sprouted Carpo 719 from and ended up using that for years. And I just want to touch base kind of on my intentions here before I start. I have always shared my carpentry and creations and art, on my secondary channel, Carpo 719, and so therefore it has a lot more interaction and traffic. But sometimes I like to post something on my smaller channel. In fact, I like it even more. It reminds me of some of the musical artists in the past who will, like when the Grateful Dead would show up and play some small venue, like, towards the end of their, well, they're not the best example. The point being, a lot of really famous artists out there who are well known will sometimes play under a pseudonym just so they can get that kind of intimate feeling of playing in a small venue. And I feel the same way about my audience. And I'm fortunately on Carpo 719, my audience is still pretty small, so I can at least interact. But I don't want to bombard my main channel with things like this because I want to build guitars and I want to share the experience. I want to share the things that I do and the discoveries I make as they come, because they're easy to forget. And for other people who might be coming up in guitar building and want to do the same thing, I can at least share that with them. The first thing I did, and the other day I made a live video where I sanded these all down and then I had to leave, so I ended the live cast. This is picking up where I left off. And I have this file which has curves on these smaller edges, and those curves fit around these frets. And so the idea is to come in here and, crown them is what it's called. Because when I sanded it the other day with this big sanding block, what I did was I took the frets down with a 12-inch radius here, and I took those frets down to where the marker, let's just backtrack for a minute here. So I have a marker, I made a marker on the tops of all of them, and then I sanded them to where the marker was gone to make sure that all frets are even. You're not going to have any buzz or any problems with the frets themselves. Then you'll have some flat areas. So you come back with this curved crowning jig here, this file, and you file it. Now I've already done this to them, which is, I didn't want to sit here and burden you with hearing this creaky the whole time. But there's really a process to learning how to do this right, and I've learned as I've gone. I'm definitely no expert. This is the 5th fretboard I've done, and there are these little pieces that fit around the frets. They're pieces of metal, like so, and they go over the frets and allow you to polish without hitting the fretboard, which is really handy for doing like repair work, things like that. But what I found is that they're usually not necessary as long as you have good tape on the neck. This is why it looks blue, and it's clamped down so I can't pull it up. But this blue tape is to protect the fretboard while I do what I need to do. So once I have that crowned, I'll come back with this gauge, which fits over all the frets and allows me to determine whether or not this neck is totally straight before I begin. I've already done this in the past, but it's important to do it again. And it's actually better than I could have hoped for. The truth is, I consistently am surprising myself into how accurate I'm making things. That's, got to give yourself a little self-pride. I hear a loud truck outside. So now I have these 20 frets and I need to polish them, and I have a couple of methods here which I'd like to share. The first thing I did was the sandpaper, obviously. I have a 4-part process. I do the sandpaper with 120. I'd like to get actually more like a 240 maybe to do the evening out. But the truth is it goes a lot quicker with 120. Then you come back with this, which is actually an 80 grit sandpaper. And this is my secret weapon. This is a Dremel flap wheel. And this flap wheel just has a whole bunch of little pieces of 80 grit sandpaper on it. And you probably can't see it very well, but it's a very simple Dremel tool. And so my intent is, after I've flattened out the frets to where they're all at least level, as I said, I come back with the crowning jig and I make sure that they're rounded properly. But then I'm going to come back with the... Looks like my clamp fell off. That was not very effective. So what I'm going to do now is come back with this flap wheel, and I'm going to hit all of these with the 80 grit. Don't mind the grits because it's actually worn down, so it's probably more like a 200 grit. And I'm going to hit it all with this. Then I'm going to come back with hand sandpaper. I'm going to go with the 600 grit first, and then I'm going to come back with like 1,000 or 2,000. This is because that's what I have. But generally, it's a 5-part process. I do the main sanding block, then I come back with this 80 grit wheel and smooth it out. Then I come back with the 600 grit by hand, 1,000 grit by hand, and the very final process, which will be fun to share, is this little buffing wheel right here. And this is from a Dremel kit, and this is a big block of that Dremel polishing compound you'll always see if you've ever bought one of them. So now I'm going to go to town and just do it and see what I can do. You don't want to go too hard on this because you don't want to grind it down. You just want to even it out. I'd like to find my mask, but I don't know where it is. I'll just use my portable mask. professional mask. Yes. Good stuff. Can't believe it's already taken me 10 minutes to do that. That's what I'm talking about. Time flies, and you don't even realize how much time it's been. I've got to go pick up my son in like 20 minutes, so now I'm coming back with 600 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to basically polish all of these at 600 grit until I can't see any lines in them. Because, you know, you could also use 400 grit or, you know, 800 grit. I don't know what they come in. I know it's usually like 80, 120, 150, 180, you know, 220, 280, whatever. There's a lot of different grades. You can buy a whole series of sandpaper. But this is the part that honestly I do by hand because I really think it's important to not allow machines to take over when you need to feel something, and just, you can feel any little marks in there, anything you might have missed. And you're going to have to go back a couple times. I mean, sandpaper, here's the thing. You start out with the 600 grit, right? And this stuff can be used wet or dry. But then after you've used it for a bit, the granules have come off and you end up with like 1,000 grit. It's just the way it works. If you start out with a 120 grit sandpaper, especially a cheaper sandpaper, that makes it even worse because then it wears out a lot quicker and you don't realize you're not using what you need. And you're just spending like all this time trying to get it to work, and it feels rough, but it's just not digging in the way it should. And I've been a carpenter for, you know, most of my life. I understand how these things work as far as our brains thinking that things work. Like if we start out with something working well, whether it be a drill bit or sandpaper, the next thing we know, you know, it starts losing its efficacy, but we don't realize how bad it is until we swap out for a new drill bit or sandpaper or whatever it might be. And if you're anything like me, you just don't want to waste material because you're using something, it's working. Why would I want to swap it out when there's still plenty of life left on it? But the fact is, and we all know this, there's a point where you just got to throw shit away. And that includes sandpaper. It'll work for a long time, but eventually it's just not doing its job anymore. And that's how I'm starting to feel about this 600 grit here, but I don't have much more of it, so I'm trying to get the most out of it. You know what I mean? It's all about getting the most out of it. It's beautiful. I see nobody watching this live stream, and I think that's wonderful because the intention is not to get people enthralled in watching it, but rather to, in the future, come across this and say, oh, I'll watch that because I want to watch a guy fret a guitar, I guess. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. I want this channel to be educational. I want to show people how to do these things, but at the same time make it interesting. And so last time I talked about the idea of of starting something, of how hard it is sometimes just to get started. And I kind of wanted to move into the important factor here of not just getting started, but finishing. As I said, I've been building guitars for a few months now, and I've just had an utter passion for it. I've loved it. I have such a great time doing it. Every day I'm actually focused on it. And when I'm out there grinding away, making a guitar body, it's pretty simple because I get out there, I see progress, I cut it out, I shape it, I think, wow, this is amazing, this looks great. When you're doing stuff like this, you can spend like 4 hours just grinding down on some frets and absolutely making no real physical, visible change to the instrument you're working on. And that's okay, because you know it's all going towards making sure that it works, and in the end that everything works perfectly. It's the kind of part where people might cut corners because they don't feel like anyone can see it. You know, it's like, of course you'll see the frets. That's not what I mean, but in the sense that it doesn't have the same excitement as building a brand new guitar and doing all the parts, doing all the final details and then the wiring. It can be extremely daunting. Because, I mean, you'll spend hours on something and then end up having to rewire it, and it's kind of a frustrating endeavor. Oh, wow. See, that's what I'm waiting for. But as I was going to say, yeah, once you get to those results that you're looking for, that's when it really starts to, I guess you get the satisfaction of knowing, wow, now it's working out. So this is, I think, 2000 grit sandpaper, which I do after the 600. And you might think that, oh, that's skipping too far ahead. It's not really, because the 600 becomes 1000 and 1500 pretty quickly. My thing here is to get these as polished as I can with the 2000 grit or 1500 grit, whatever it is. And then I come back with the Dremel again with the polishing bit, and that's where it really stands out. In fact, I'm going to swap those out right now while I'm thinking about it. And then maybe I can show y'all before I go how I do that, because it's one of the most crucial components, I believe. Alright, where's that dumb wrench? There it is. And the sad fact is that there are so many tools required to do stuff like this that it's just a pain in the ass. Every little drill bit and screw bit, you know, it's just here I am complaining, doing something I enjoy, but it's a lot of work and a lot of tools, a lot of different things you've got to figure out and understand. All right, so we got this thing on now. This is the Dremel polishing bit. So what I do now is I turn this on, hit some of the polishing compound. Whoops. These parts have to be straight. There we go. For some reason, all right. Darn it. Uh-oh. We're having problems here. We're having Dremel problems. I don't know why. But it would appear that the thing is just spinning loose in there. Now I know this end tends to just kind of fit in there. I don't know what's going on here. All right, let's try tightening this more, maybe. Maybe it's the end here. Always some kind of a problem. All right, let's try that. Oh, yeah, that's better. Woo. Mix this up. that's the process. As I said, sandpaper, and then more sandpaper, and then finer sandpaper, then a Dremel bit with the polishing compound. When I first got this stuff with the Dremel, I thought polishing compound was a joke. Like, I thought it was all hardened. I'd never used it in all the years I've, seen it. And I realized it's because you have to get the brush spinning and then put it in there, and it just goops it on there. And you probably can't see it very well from there, but as you can see, the frets are all in varying degrees of, I'll just take the thing off here. There we go. The frets are all in varying degrees of a polished state. But once you get to the first few, you can see that shine on there? Those are beautiful. And they're all level. So the first 4 or 5 here are ready to go. Now I just have to, I got basically a quarter of them done. So I'm going to go pick up my son from school and then come back because my days are always cut up. I can't get into the groove because, there's always something else to do. I'll take out my amazing earbuds that help block, because yes, I am wearing earbuds to protect me from that loud noise. And I would recommend dust masks and earbuds for everyone. So that's the end of my crappy live cast for this one. They'll get better next time. I need better lighting, and I'll talk to you next time. Be well.